Hello guys, Omni here. Just wrapped up episode 4 of the final season of Arrow. And from here on out, we're going to be talking spoilers. If you haven't watched the episode, go back, tune back in after you've seen it. You know, where we left off last episode with the future Team Arrow, or at least what's left of it, is back in the present with current Team Arrow and seeing the reaction. Oh my God. William's reaction, because he is the confirmation that this is Oliver. You know, Mia's never physically known him in her, at least her memory, at the point where she was able to actually remember anything. So this is William's confirmation of this being her father is just so powerful. And William is just the heart of this episode and our North Star in all of this, you know, wanting to come clean with them right out of the gate because he's, you know, they're going to know something's up if we're withholding information because they, of course, want to try and, you know, not let out too much of what happens in the future slip because who knows what that might cause or what that might do. That aside, they do have to introduce themselves, and John's reaction to finding out about Connor when he calls him dad, and because he hasn't adopted him yet. And that's really interesting. There's a nice little comment when all of present Team Arrow kind of reconvening on their own about what is currently happening. When Renee's just like, you know, at least this time you didn't throw up because that used to be John's thing. This is a nice little callback to like anytime really something weird, supernatural, or crazy would happen, John would just throw up. As you probably could have expected with this, with future Team Arrow just kind of trying to keep their secrets about Zoe, about JJ, about what's going on, and with these current Deathstroke attacks starting up, because they decide to, again, withhold any of that information about what's going on. Also because they don't want to tell Renee about Zoe's future, understandably so, or John about the fact that his actual son grows up and becomes a murderer and leader of this Deathstroke gang. I get that, but at the same time, Williams, like, they're going to know something's up. Their original Team Arrow, he's lived in that time. He kind of knows how they operate. He's been in the bunker when they've actually been on an active mission. So he has a sense and feel of what this is. But of course, he just goes along to keep, you know, Mia under wraps. And they barge in trying to investigate the Deathstrokes and, of course, get caught. And who's there to save them? Team Arrow. And guess who we get coming back, returning face? We haven't seen him in some time. Curtis comes in to be our Felicity, our guy in the chair to help with this. But Oliver's got a mission for him. And this is where I think things are getting interesting because he hands him some fabric that was touched by the antimatter wave that destroyed Earth 2 and asked him to analyze it. And they're hoping to build some type of, I guess, device or a way to replicate it or some way they could use it against Monitor in case he is, of course, working against them, against their wishes or their goals or whatever. So in a sense, they're making an anti-Monitor weapon. Do they create Monitor in this anti-Monitor by doing this in this timeline? Who knows? There could be a different change from it. We don't really know what the Arrowverse wants to do yet with introducing the anti-Monitor. We've seen him. We know he's there. We know he's coming. But who knows? We'll see how he comes about. When they're rescued from that trap by OG Team Arrow, that's when everything starts to come out about the future, why they're there, why they thought to investigate that out on their own, what's kind of piqued their interest and reasons why. It definitely raised some questions, them being caught while investigating these bombings. So it all comes out, and seeing everybody's reactions, especially John learning that JJ eventually killed Zoe, and Renee's reaction to that. The team, and also not on top of that, Renee learning that he becomes a corrupt politician later. And what happens to the city, what happened to Mia, them growing up alone, and cities just falling into filth, gang wars, corruption, all of that. And that pretty much everything that they're currently doing is setting that in motion, setting that into play. And, you know, this episode really is just about the main team, our present team, being faced with the consequences of their current course, their current actions. And this is giving them a chance to change that. Now, this is where I'm wondering what direction this is going to go. Are Mia, Connor, and William, are they going to get like Nora'd out of existence at the end of this, or are they protected by whatever force actually brought them here? Will they go back and be slotted in and have memories of a past that no longer exists? Are they going to go back and things are going to be different? Things are going to be better? Or are they going to go back to their timeline? Have they created a split, a bridge, an alternate timeline or universe like Flashpoint? The Arrowverse has not been very keen on timelines. We've got universes down pat, but timelines, it hasn't very well been too consistent. We've had the future timeline where Oliver didn't have an arm. We've got the one where JJ or was just part of the team later. There was a bunch of different variations of the future we've seen up until this point. So this very well can just change. That all of Team Arrow, future Team Arrow, they could end up on completely different paths if their timeline gets reset. And I'm wondering if these versions of the characters are going to get wiped out by this. You know, after what happened with Zoe, to try to prevent what happens to JJ, Mia is now on a mission to kill Grant Wilson to prevent JJ from being seduced, prevent anybody from being seduced by the Deathstroke gang. And, there's this lovely talk, which is obviously conveniently set up for someone who also is not that keen on Oliver and his decisions, but was very in tune with Felicity. Laurel from Earth 2, our current Laurel, goes on with her to go on their patrol to go track down Grant to investigate into everything. And, she gives a nice little talk. I like this because it's all callbacks. This episode is a lot of callbacks. This time, surprisingly enough, skipping back to season 2 because on Slade's siege on Star City. And the way they stop Grant and his plan at sieging the city is by knowing what Slade did and how they approached that and doing it differently. They keep the city from panicking and going into chaos and riots. They tactically think it out because they know what to plan against, and they tackle it in a very tactical way. And I liked how they did that. They prevented it nicely and all worked out. And Mia took to heart some of Laurel's kind of comments about how she even had to talk Felicity out of killing Diaz, which was fitting because this is the mindset that Mia is on currently. And when Oliver steps in front of her to stop her from actually doing the execution, we have that resolution there. And she makes a little comment when she's having this conversation with Laurel. Laurel makes a comment to her. It was like, like with your mother, I told her, sometimes you just have to try another way. And she ends up giving Oliver a chance, taking that to actually give him a moment to try to talk to her, try to come to an understanding. And their conversation when Oliver takes Mia to the tombstones of his sister and his father at the Queen Manor was really nice. Telling her that, she asked him for advice actually, that, you've lost people. Does it get better? Do you learn to live? Does the guilt go away? And he tells her the truth. No, you just learn to live with it. And like with Robert Queen, he didn't really know who he was. He had a completely false version of his father in his mind until after his death. And, like Oliver says in this episode, he doesn't want that to happen this time. And I really want to see how they remedy that. I did watch the preview for next week because for some reason CW stopped putting them on their websites, the previews for the next episodes. I don't know if they're just not wanting that to be easily accessible. So I just looked it on YouTube because if I was watching this live, it would have been available to me anyway. See them tracking down. Curtis finds out that the materials they need to actually craft the antimatter weapon that they need is held up in a place in Russia, conveniently. So we're going to be exploring the little Russia arc, I would assume, of Oliver next season when he goes to Russia. And we get a little bit of a fight club, I guess, where they go into an underground fighting ring with Mia. So this is going to be, I assume next episode is going to be a Mia Oliver bonding episode. And I'm really interested in seeing that growth. But at the end of this episode, And Monitor shows up as he does at the end of all of these episodes to just make me shake my fist at the sky, man. And, after all the growth of Laurel and all of that, he barters the return of her Earth because he claims to have the power to bring it back, but he will only do it if she betrays Oliver. After all of this, after all they've done, after all they've been through, whether she likes him or not, or whether she blames him for it might even be because she blames him for the destruction of Earth 2 in the previous episodes. So maybe that'll be her motivation. How will she betray him is what I'm wondering. What is she going to do? And is she going to do it? Monitor, okay, we don't know for a fact that Monitor is the one that brought the team together from the future and from the past. We don't know. We don't know for a fact that Monitor was the one that brought the timelines together. It's fair to assume it. The team assumes it. And because they assume it, I think it might be a misdirect. I think maybe some other force might be the one responsible for it. But I guess we just have to wait and see. Because honestly, if he knows enough to bring them there, he has to know that they're plotting against him. Or maybe, again, like we've said before, that he's playing the role of the villain in this way to get them to prepare on their own to be ready for what's coming. But light spoiler for this week's episode of Flash. Last week actually we learned that Nash Wells is hunting the Monitor. So there's something else going on there. And in this episode, or this week's episode of Flash, so if you haven't seen that episode, just skip ahead maybe 30 seconds. And he talks about, he's been tracking the Monitor, Mar-Novu. He dispels myths, and he wants them to gather the team at the place, and he's tracked Mar-Novu too. And he says that he's found a way to save Barry. And I'm really interested to see how that all pans out. And I just don't know no one right now has any grasp on what the Monitor's plans are. And makes it hard to speculate how this is all going to play out. And that's one thing I can at least really appreciate about this season so far, is it hasn't made it too apparent to be able to pick apart Monitor's plan or his scheme, what he's actually getting towards. And I like that. It keeps everything fresh and exciting when it comes week to week. But this episode, I cried. I cried so much. William, I forget the actor's name, but he wins this episode. I seen them banter. You could really see the aspects of Oliver and Felicity come out in his performance, and the way they just slide back into it, because at least he's known Oliver, and the way they just slide back into their formality with each other. I loved it. The rapport that they have with each other, the way they bounce off of each other was really great. And I want to see how Oliver can build that up with Mia and resolve and bridge that chasm that these choices have bridged between them, to give them both the reconciliation that they need, the consistency. I'm missing the word, but you know what I'm saying. Anyway, guys, what did you guys think of this episode? What were your favorite parts? What was your favorite scene? What were your favorite moments? Is there anything in the episode you didn't really like or catch on to? Let me know your thoughts. What do you think the Monitor is up to at this point? What do you think he's going to have Laurel do? All your thoughts down in the comments. Let's talk about it after the video here today. We'll carry on that conversation after the video. And thank you guys. If you're still here, please support the channel by liking, subscribing, and commenting on this video. And I'll catch you guys next week with the next episode of the final season of Arrow.